your part of your brain is saying, hey, don't do this. You shouldn't be injecting into your body. So I wanted to talk about the time that I had to inject myself. So this happened years ago. It's about 6 years ago. I was monkeying around. We were out at the coast. I was flying this trainer kite, preparing to do some kite boarding. So I was pretty new, didn't really know how it worked. So I was flying this kite. It was a really windy day. I probably shouldn't have been flying that day. Even though it was a trainer kite, it was about 2 meters, 6 feet, very small kite. It still would yank me down the beach a little bit. One time a good gust got me, yanked me down the beach. I ended up tumbling. And so what happened is during that tumble, I fell, did this hyperflexion, I believe is what happened, of my thumb joint and injured that joint. So injured this MP joint, or my metacarpal phalangeal joint. It was pretty painful. It was sore for a while, and affected what I did when I was using it, injecting other patients, when I was using my phone. Any sort of movement of that thumb was bothersome. And it was going on for about 4, 5, 6 months and still not easing up. So at that time I'm like, hey, I'm kind of tired of dealing with this. Let me just treat it like I treat my patients. And so standard of care would typically involve putting some steroid in there. I personally don't want to put steroid in my body. I know that putting a steroid into the joint leads to further breakdown, accelerates the breakdown in the joint. So I didn't want to worsen the wear and tear process. I knew that, if I left this injury untreated, it's possible that arthritis in that joint would speed up already as it was. So I want to do as much as possible to minimize that and shut that down. So back then, this is 2016, so the things that were available back then were PRP, and I knew that PRP for joint issues aren't as good as some of the other things. So using something like a bone marrow concentrate would be ideal. I didn't really want to take my own bone marrow. So at the time they had some amniotic tissue products. These got a bit of a bad rap because they would market them as a stem cell product, which they weren't. They were just some amniotic tissue, and they were frozen, so any sort of stem cells that were in there would be gone during that freeze thaw process. So that's what I use. You can just order a small amount, put it right in the joint. Since then, we've used it, other clinics have used them, decent results. Not as much evidence supporting that as with bone marrow. The FDA also kind of shut those down. They want to see some more trials before they let us use those for this type of thing. For wound care, we can still use amniotic tissue products for wound care. Worked pretty good. So I did it, flared it up a little bit right after, and then it usually takes a month or so to kick in, and I had a probably similar experience with my patients where 1 month in, 6 weeks in, hard to tell if it's any better. You have some good days, other days you're like, I don't know if it's helping. And then about 2-3 months in, it was significantly better, where I didn't really have much pain at all, kind of forgetting that was actually a problem. And the joint was pretty good to the point where it felt almost normal. The range of motion probably wasn't 100%, but pain-wise was almost 100%. And I think about 2 years later, it was creeping back a little bit. I don't know if I re-aggravated or what, but it was creeping back a little bit. So I'm like, let's do it again. And at that time, we were using a different product. We were using this exosome product, which is some vesicles that are released by bone marrow cells that are obtained from someone donating their bone marrow cells, and then they isolated the exosomes off. So it was a nice product. Again, something that came really early, and FDA said, hey, you know what, you should hold off, again, need more research than what we have before you can use these. So we've stopped using those in the last couple of years, but we did have some success with some of our patients with this exosome product. So again, a little bit more convenient than pulling my own bone marrow. So I use some of these exosomes, small amount into that thumb joint. And similar response as earlier with the prior procedure, where it took a couple months to start taking full effect. And then 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks out, feeling a bit better, but not quite sure, because you'd have some good days and bad days. Sometimes a little bit discouraged, like, oh dang, is this really working? But then it really improved. I'd probably say about 3 months out, significantly better. So this was 2018, it's about 4 years ago. And since then, it's been pretty good, unless I whack the joint or do something to it. So I'd say my function is almost 100% better, which is nice. Again, so hopefully some of these things have shut down the progression of the arthritis from whatever I did. And really probably what I did, without imaging it, I'm not sure if there's any damage to the cartilage, but there's most likely damage to the joint capsule, some supporting ligaments. And so just a simple intra-articular injection was able to help improve that to now having a totally normal joint. So depending on the injury, what we treat with people will sometimes not only treat the joint, but sometimes we'll do the supporting ligaments as well. So we had a recent guy that we treated his CMC joint, and so we treated not only in the joint but also some of the supporting ligaments in the joint capsule for the joint. So that was my story. I had to inject myself. It was a little funny. We did it under X-ray guidance and having to inject with my left hand. So it's kind of an interesting experience having to inject yourself. Your part of your brain is saying, "Hey, don't do this. You shouldn't be injecting into your body." You know, people that are diabetic and have to give themselves shots, it's probably the same thing. There's a little bit of a hesitation, like, hey, you know, what are you doing, sticking a needle in yourself? But in the end, it was worth it. So happy it was available, happy I did it, and happy my hands 100%. Make sure you subscribe. Until next time.